My father waited until our bags were checked before he told me I was not getting on the plane. I stood beneath the bright lights of Denver International Airport, with 8 suitcases beside me, a leather folder of confirmations against my chest, and my phone open to the reservation dashboard for our 9-day trip to Maui. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 38, and I had spent 6 months planning my parents' 40th anniversary vacation. Apparently, I had planned it for everyone except myself. Dad leaned closer, as though lowering his voice made the words kinder. "We've decided it would be better if you stayed home." Behind him, my mother, Elaine, adjusted the pearl necklace she wore for important family photographs. "This trip is supposed to be peaceful," she said. "You've made everything tense lately." My younger sister Vanessa stood several feet away, filming a departure video with her husband, Derek, and her friend Brooke. They wore matching blue shirts that read Bennett Family, 40 years together. There was no shirt for me. Brooke was holding the boarding folder I had prepared. My boarding folder. My brother Owen looked at the floor. I asked, "Where is Brooke sleeping?" Vanessa stopped recording and gave me the satisfied smile she had used since childhood whenever she got something that belonged to me. "She'll use your room." For a moment, the airport noise disappeared. No rolling bags, no boarding announcements, just my father telling me I should be grateful they had allowed me to organize everything. "The villa is booked through me," I said. "So are the vehicles, dinner, and excursions." Dad waved one hand. "You handled paperwork, Claire. Don't turn it into a performance." Then he used the sentence my family had repeated for years. "Family helps without keeping score." What none of them understood was that the villa was not simply reserved under my email address. I was the contracting guest, verified cardholder, and only person authorized to release the bookings. They thought they were leaving behind an unwanted daughter. They were actually leaving behind the person holding their vacation together. Before I tell you what happened when they landed in Maui, tell me in the comments what you would have done. Subscribe and stay with me, because the airport was only where everything became visible. To understand why I stood there instead of screaming, I have to explain the family that raised me. My father, Richard, owned a successful regional construction company. He cared deeply about appearances. To clients and relatives, he was generous, confident, and devoted to his family. My mother managed that image. Elaine remembered birthdays, arranged photographs, and made sure disagreements disappeared before outsiders saw them. Vanessa, 34, was the golden child. She was charming, emotional, and always in need of rescue. Every mistake became an emergency someone else had to solve. Owen, 31, survived by staying neutral. He noticed unfairness, but speaking up might cost him comfort. And then there was me. I was the reliable daughter, quiet, organized, careful with money, useful. As a child, I learned that affection usually came after service. I watched Vanessa, fixed last-minute problems, arranged birthdays, and kept family secrets. When I succeeded, Mom called me independent. It sounded like praise. What it really meant was that I should need less. Vanessa was sensitive, so everyone protected her feelings. I was strong, so everyone expected me to absorb the damage. That was why Maui mattered. My parents wanted photographs proving they had built a perfect marriage and a close family. They believed I would protect that picture because I always had. Even after they hurt me, I fixed the problem. Even after they excluded me, I made sure nobody else noticed. Standing in that airport, I finally understood the role they had given me. I was not supposed to belong. I was supposed to be useful. And the question I could no longer avoid was how much of my life I had already paid for that position. That role did not begin with a family vacation. It had been built through years of small moments that taught everyone what they could take from me. In my 20s, Dad called whenever his office paperwork piled up. "Claire, you're good with details. Can you organize these tax folders?" That usually meant an entire Saturday at his dining room table, surrounded by receipts and cold coffee. He never offered to pay me or asked whether I had plans. Mom treated my time the same way. "Vanessa needs help moving this weekend," she once said. "I have a work event. You can miss one. Your sister is overwhelmed." Vanessa had hired movers. She wanted someone to pack her kitchen, label every box, and clean the apartment afterward. I did it. When Owen needed a new place, I searched listings and reviewed his lease. When Vanessa overspent on her wedding, I helped renegotiate vendor contracts. When Mom had minor surgery, I used vacation days to prepare meals, organize medication, and drive her to appointments. Vanessa visited once. She took a photograph beside Mom's hospital bed and posted about how frightening it was to see her best friend in pain. Relatives praised her devotion. No one mentioned the daughter sleeping on the sofa with an alarm set for the next dose of medicine. Visible affection mattered in my family. Quiet work disappeared. The clearest example came when my company gave me an operations award. I invited my parents to the dinner weeks in advance. 2 hours before it began, Mom called. "We can't make it. Vanessa is choosing wedding flowers, and she's very upset. She has a florist. She needs family support." I attended alone. Later, Dad texted, "Proud of you. You understand how sensitive your sister is." I read that message in my car, until the ballroom lights went dark. That was the pattern. My strength was always used as proof that hurting me had no consequences. The Maui trip grew from the same system. Mom first asked me to compare a few hotels. Within a month, I was managing flights, transfers, a villa, 2 rental vehicles, restaurant reservations, dietary notes, and activities for 9 adults. Dad promised everyone would reimburse me after his year-end business distribution. Vanessa kept adding upgrades: a photographer, a larger bedroom, a sunset cruise. Whenever I mentioned the budget, she laughed. "You make everything feel like a business meeting." I advanced the deposits only after receiving written promises from everyone. I told myself that meant I was being careful. Then Vanessa messaged me privately. "Send me every confirmation. We shouldn't have to depend on you once we get there." That sentence stayed with me, because dependence was exactly what they had created, until they no longer wanted me present. What my family did not know was that travel was not a hobby for me. For 11 years, I had worked in hospitality operations. 5 years earlier, I used my savings to co-found Northline Retreats with my colleague Naomi Chen. We managed executive travel, private vacation homes, and complex group bookings. The company was profitable and respected. My family still described my career as booking hotels. I stopped correcting them. They did not know I owned part of Northline. They did not know I negotiated contracts or handled liability for expensive properties. The Maui arrangements were not ordinary online reservations. The Wailea Villa, SUVs, private dinner, and excursions were secured through Northline's corporate agreements. Those agreements offered better rates, but they also created strict responsibilities. I was the contracting client and lead guest. My business card guaranteed the remaining balances, damage holds, and incidentals. Everyone else was only an approved occupant. If I did not travel, the vendors required written authorization from me and replacement payment from another guest. Without both, the bookings could not be transferred. That was not a loophole I invented after the airport. It was standard protection. My family heard the word reservation and assumed everything belonged to them. They also knew little about the life I had built. I owned a modest townhouse, had an emergency fund, and no longer depended on Dad's approval or the inheritance he mentioned whenever he wanted obedience. My strength was not secret millions. It was stability. It was knowledge. It was the ability to stop paying for people who treated my silence like permission. 2 weeks before the trip, I noticed unusual activity in the account logs. Someone had tried twice to add Brooke as an occupant and reassign the villa's primary bedroom to Vanessa. Both requests came from Vanessa's email. When I called her, she laughed. I was only checking options. I wanted to believe her, but one question had already started following me everywhere. Had they planned to remove me long before we reached the airport? The first person who ever asked what I wanted was my Aunt June. She was my mother's older sister, 62, retired from a long career as a school counselor, and completely unimpressed by my family's polished version of itself. June had watched the pattern for years. At Thanksgiving, 3 months before the Maui trip, Dad criticized me for refusing to handle one of Vanessa's last-minute problems. "You've become very difficult lately," he said across the table. June set down her fork. "No, Richard, she has become less available. Those are not the same thing." The table went silent. Mom changed the subject, but June was quietly removed from the anniversary guest list a week later. She did not seem surprised. When I visited her in January, I brought the Maui itinerary in a thick black folder. June's kitchen smelled like cinnamon tea, and the late afternoon light fell across pages of deposits, payment deadlines, and cancellation terms. She read everything twice. "Who is carrying the financial risk?" she asked. "I am. For now. Dad said he'll reimburse me after his year-end distribution. And if he doesn't, he will." June looked at me over her glasses. I hated that I could hear the uncertainty in my own voice. She did not tell me to cancel the trip. She did not call my parents selfish or tell me to punish them. She simply said, "Make the arrangement clear enough that nobody can rewrite it later." Following her advice, I sent each traveler a written reimbursement schedule, payment deadline, and summary of the cancellation policy. Dad replied, "I'll settle everything after the trip. You know I'm good for it." Mom sent a red heart. Vanessa answered, "Contracts between relatives are embarrassing." I saved every response. June also helped me name something I had never fully understood. "Your family calls you controlling when you stop making their lives easy," she said. "That does not mean you are controlling. It means they noticed the service changed." That sentence followed me home. Around the same time I started seeing a therapist. I stopped answering every late-night call. I declined smaller favors without inventing excuses. I began saying, "I'm not available," instead of presenting evidence that my own time mattered. The reactions were immediate. Mom became wounded. Vanessa became sarcastic. Dad became formal. But for the first time, their disappointment did not automatically become my emergency. I quietly decided the Maui trip would be the last major family event I managed. Before I left June's house that evening, she tapped the folder with one finger. "If they decide they don't need you after the planning is finished, what protects you?" "The contracts," I said. I believed that was the answer. I did not yet understand that paperwork could protect my money, but it could not protect me from the moment I finally saw what my family thought I was worth. During the final week before departure, every request became more demanding. Mom wanted fresh flowers waiting at the villa because she had planned a photo session in the entryway. Dad added private golf for himself and Derek. Vanessa wanted a photographer, the largest bedroom, and permission for Brooke to join without contributing to the cost. I approved only the items already covered by the agreed deposits. Anything new needs to be paid directly, I wrote in the family group chat. Vanessa responded almost immediately. "Imagine ruining Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary over spreadsheets." Dad added, "Try to be flexible for once." The night before our flight, Vanessa sent everyone a color-coded room chart. My name was not on it. I checked twice. Brooke's name appeared beside the primary bedroom I had reserved for myself. I called Mom. "Where am I sleeping?" She sighed as though I had asked something unreasonable. "We'll sort it out once we arrive." Vanessa assigned my room to Brooke. "Claire, please don't start this tonight. Your father is already stressed." 10 minutes later, Owen texted me privately. "Vanessa promised Brooke your room. I told her it was wrong, but please don't make a scene at the airport." I stared at his message. He knew. They all knew, and their main concern was not that I was being pushed out, it was that I might react where someone could see it. I saved the text, packed the printed confirmations, and arrived at Denver International Airport before sunrise. The terminal smelled like coffee and floor cleaner. Families moved past us with neck pillows and carry-ons. Then I saw the shirts. Everyone wore matching blue anniversary shirts. Everyone except me. Mom touched her necklace and said, "Oh, Claire, yours must have been left in the box." Vanessa turned away to hide a smile. Dad handed me the baggage receipt and asked me to approve extra fees. Then he demanded a larger SUV for the island. I covered the baggage charge that had already been authorized. I refused the vehicle upgrade. "No one has reimbursed me for the existing balance," I said. The mood changed instantly. Vanessa began telling the others I had been difficult for months. Mom looked embarrassed whenever I spoke. Dad checked his watch and whispered with Vanessa near the check-in kiosks. Still, I held the folder against my chest and told myself we would get through security, board the plane, and settle everything privately. Then Dad called everyone except me several feet away. He said they needed to make a family decision. As they gathered around him, Vanessa walked toward Brooke and placed a boarding folder in her hands. My folder, my itinerary, and in that moment, I knew the decision had already been made. Dad called me over only after the others had checked their luggage. He stood near the airline kiosks with Mom on one side and Vanessa on the other. Owen stayed several steps behind them. Derek had his arms folded. Brooke held the folder I had prepared and avoided looking directly at me. Dad spoke quietly, but not kindly. We've discussed it, and we think the trip will be better if you stay here. I stared at him. You discussed it? Mom stepped forward, with the careful expression she used when she wanted cruelty to look reasonable. This is only a cooling-off period, Claire. You've been tense for weeks, and this anniversary is important to us. Vanessa gave a small shrug. Brooke is easier to travel with. Then she added, and she actually knows how to have fun. People nearby were checking bags and pulling children toward security. A woman in a red coat glanced in our direction. Dad noticed and lowered his voice further. We are not doing this publicly. You brought me to the airport and removed me from a trip I planned, I said. It became public when you decided to do it here. Owen looked down at his shoes. I asked the only practical question left. Do you still expect to use the villa, the vehicles, the dinner reservation, and the excursions? Dad's face hardened. Everything is already paid for. No. The deposits are paid. My card still guarantees the final balances, the villa's damage hold, the rental vehicles, and the incidentals. Vanessa's voice rose immediately. So now you're threatening to cancel Mom and Dad's anniversary because you didn't get your way? Several people turned toward us. Mom's eyes filled with tears almost on command. I only wanted one peaceful vacation with my children. A stranger looked at me with quiet disapproval, exactly as Mom intended. I felt the old pressure building inside me, the urge to explain everything, to lower my voice, to apologize so no one would think I was difficult. Dad moved closer. You have always been jealous of Vanessa, he said. Maybe a week alone will help you think about why you make it so hard for people to love you. That sentence landed harder than anything else. Not because I believed it, because part of me had spent years trying to prove it wrong. I looked at the matching shirts, Brooke holding my itinerary, Owen's silence, and my mother's tears. Then something inside me became still. I opened the family group chat. I'm asking one final time, I said. Are you officially removing me from the trip and refusing to reimburse the remaining charges? Dad glanced at Vanessa, then took out his phone. A message appeared. Claire will not be joining us. This is a family decision. We will not reimburse any additional costs caused by her behavior. He looked almost satisfied. There. Now there's no confusion. He thought the message protected him. Vanessa pointed at me. Do not interfere with the reservations out of spite. Mom wiped her eyes. Please don't be dramatic. Dad picked up his carry-on. A good daughter would understand. Then they walked toward security. Vanessa lifted her phone and started filming again. Anniversary trip officially begins now, she said brightly. I stood beside the empty luggage cart and watched them disappear into the line. I did not call after them. I did not cry. That surprised me. A few minutes later, the airline announced boarding for their flight. My phone vibrated. The villa's final payment authorization had arrived. The charge had to be approved before their arrival in Maui. I walked to a quiet corner near an airport lounge and opened my laptop. My hands were steady now. First, I called Northline's emergency operations number. Naomi answered on the second ring. Claire, aren't you supposed to be boarding? They removed me from the trip. There was a brief silence. Are the other guests assuming financial responsibility? No. Do you have that in writing? Yes. Naomi's voice became calm and professional. Then we cannot keep your authorization active. The company would be exposed, and so would you. She did not ask whether I wanted revenge. She asked for documentation. I sent her dad's group chat message, Owen's warning, Vanessa's room chart, and the earlier reimbursement promises. Together, we followed the contract. The villa was released before the final balance processed. The SUVs and excursions were canceled. The private anniversary dinner was placed on hold. It could still proceed if another traveler signed a new agreement and paid directly. I left their airline tickets untouched. Those belonged to them. This was not sabotage. It was the end of my financial consent. I sent one email to the family. Since I have been formally removed as lead guest and no traveler has accepted the outstanding costs, my payment authorization has been withdrawn. Vendor contact information is attached. You may make replacement arrangements directly. Then I closed the laptop. Aunt June picked me up 40 minutes later. The moment I sat in her car, the tears finally came. Not because I had lost Maui, because I understood that they had planned to take my labor, my money, and my room, then leave me behind like excess baggage. June let me cry without interrupting. When I was quiet, she said, "You protected yourself. Let the truth do the rest." 3 hours later, the villa manager emailed me. The Bennett party had landed in Kahului. They were asking why their airport transfer had not arrived. Seconds later, Vanessa's name flashed across my phone. Her message contained 6 words. "Fix this now. We are stranded." I did not answer Vanessa's message. For the next 20 minutes, my phone lit up with calls from her, Dad, Mom, and Derek. Then the notifications stopped. A minute later, Vanessa started a video call inside our extended family group chat. She wanted an audience. When I answered, I was sitting at Aunt June's kitchen table with a cup of tea cooling beside me. Vanessa's face filled the screen. Behind her, my family stood in the lobby of the Wailea resort, surrounded by suitcases. Mom was crying into a folded tissue. Dad was arguing with a woman at the front desk. Brooke kept asking where they were supposed to sleep. Derek looked furious. Owen stood apart from everyone, staring at the floor the same way he had at the airport. Several relatives joined the call within seconds. Vanessa spoke first. "Tell everyone what you did. I withdrew my financial authorization after you removed me from the trip. You canceled our entire vacation because you were jealous." "No," I said. "I stopped guaranteeing expenses for a vacation I was told I could not attend." Dad grabbed Vanessa's phone. "Restore the reservations now." His suit jacket was wrinkled, and a vein showed near his temple. He still spoke as though I were an employee who had failed to follow instructions. "The villa manager says they cannot release the property," he continued. "The vehicles are gone. The dinner is gone. You will fix this before you embarrass your mother any further." I looked toward the front desk. "May I speak to the manager?" A woman wearing a resort name badge stepped into view. She spoke carefully. Ms. Bennett was listed as the contracting guest and financial guarantor. Her authorization was withdrawn after we received written notice that she would not be traveling. We offered the remaining guests the option to assume the contract, but no replacement payment method was provided. Dad turned toward her. "That is a private family issue." "It became a contractual issue when the lead guest was removed," she replied. The group chat went quiet. Then Naomi joined the call. She introduced herself as Northline Retreat's managing partner and confirmed that every vendor had received valid, time-stamped instructions before the family arrived. "The reservations were not transferred," Naomi said. "Any guest may book available services directly, but Northline will not charge Ms. Bennett's account." Vanessa shook her head. She secretly controlled everything. She planned this. I opened the folder Naomi and I had prepared. "No, you planned it." I shared the screenshot of Vanessa's room chart. Brooke's name appeared in the primary bedroom. Mine appeared nowhere. Then I shared Owen's message warning me before the airport. Finally, I displayed Dad's written statement. "Claire will not be joining us. This is a family decision. We will not reimburse any additional costs caused by her behavior." I followed it with the unpaid balance, the villa's final payment, the damage deposit, 2 SUVs, 3 excursions, the anniversary dinner, the photographer Vanessa had requested. Their faces changed as the total appeared. One of my cousins asked, "You expected Claire to pay all of that after leaving her at the airport?" Mom quickly answered, "We were going to settle everything later." "No," I said. "Dad wrote that you would not reimburse me." "That was written in anger," she replied. "It was written after I asked for clarity." Vanessa pointed at Owen. "He told us Claire would probably calm down and fix it." Every face turned toward him. Owen looked at me through the screen. "I knew they were planning to give Brooke your room," he said quietly. Vanessa said, "Once we got through security, you wouldn't make a scene. Dad said you would still keep the bookings because you always handle things. Vanessa's mouth fell open. Owen. He ignored her. I should have told Claire sooner. I should have stopped it. The silence after that was different. It was no longer confusion. It was recognition. The relatives watching the call understood that my exclusion had not been spontaneous. My family had planned to leave me behind while keeping everything attached to my name and card. Dad's face turned red. You have destroyed this family over money. No, I said. Money only created a record of what you expected me to tolerate. He stepped closer to the phone. You can forget about receiving anything from me when I die. That threat had controlled me for years. Dad mentioned his will whenever he wanted obedience, as though some future inheritance should excuse every present humiliation. But sitting in June's kitchen, I felt nothing. You cannot frighten me with a future gift while demanding that I finance my own humiliation today. No one spoke. Even Dad seemed startled. Then Vanessa laughed bitterly. You act like you're some powerful businesswoman because you can cancel hotel rooms. I did not cancel hotel rooms, I replied. I protected my company from unauthorized liability. Mom frowned. Your company? Naomi looked at me, silently giving me permission to decide how much to say. I had spent years minimizing my work because my family preferred me useful but unimpressive. I was finished hiding. I co-founded Northline Retreats 5 years ago, I said. I own part of the company. I negotiated the agreements you used for this trip. The discounts, property access, and vendor protections came through my business. Dad stared at me. You told us you worked in reservations. You never asked. You decided what my work was worth before I finished explaining it. The resort manager confirmed that a few rooms were still available at the public rate. Dad could reserve them immediately using his own card. The price was nearly 3 times what Northline's villa arrangement would have cost per person. Dad demanded that I reinstate the original contract. I refused. Mom asked whether I really intended to leave my parents standing in a hotel lobby on their anniversary. You left me standing at the airport, I said. The difference is that you still have choices. You just have to pay for them yourselves. Then I ended the call. The fallout began almost immediately. Dad paid for 3 resort rooms for 1 night, then moved everyone to a basic hotel near the airport when he saw the total. The private dinner, photographer, rental vehicles, and excursions were never restored. Brooke flew home the next morning. Derek blamed Vanessa for inviting her without approval. Vanessa deleted the cheerful airport video and stopped posting anniversary updates. The 9-day vacation ended after 3 days. Through Northline's contracts, I recovered most of the refundable deposits. I accepted a cancellation fee, but it was far less than the financial exposure I would have carried if I had allowed the trip to continue. I did not sue anyone. I did not contact Dad's clients or try to damage his company. Their punishment was simple. They had to pay the real cost of the trip they believed I owed them. More damaging than the money was the truth inside the family. Cousins who had been told I was unstable now had screenshots. An uncle called me privately and apologized for judging me. Owen admitted in the group chat that the airport decision had been planned. My parents' perfect anniversary story collapsed because their own words contradicted it. 3 days after they returned to Denver, Dad left me a voicemail. You have had your little performance, he said. Your mother and I are coming to your house tonight. You will explain yourself face to face. I listened once, then my doorbell camera sent an alert. Dad's truck had just pulled into my driveway. Dad rang the bell 3 times. Through the camera, I saw him standing beside Mom on my porch. He looked angry. She looked wounded. Both expressions were familiar. I did not open the door. Instead, I spoke through the intercom. You need to leave. Dad stared at the camera. Open this door, Claire. No. Mom stepped closer. How can you treat your own parents this way after everything we've done for you? I almost answered the old way. I almost listed every favor, every bill, every hour. Then I remembered that explanations had never changed them. From now on, contact me in writing, I said. Do not come here without permission. Dad threatened the will again. Mom cried. Neither apologized for the airport. They left after 10 minutes. The next morning, with June and my therapist beside me, I wrote one final letter. I would no longer plan family events, guarantee expenses, lend money, or accept surprise visits. I required 6 months of no contact. Any future relationship would depend on a direct apology, repayment of the cancellation fee, and consistent respect. Owen apologized without asking me to forgive him immediately. I told him regret mattered only if it changed his behavior. Vanessa called the room issue a misunderstanding. Dad called me ungrateful. Mom said I had embarrassed the family. I blocked them on social media and kept one email address open for essential matters. For the first time, I stopped managing everyone's reaction to my boundary. 8 months later, Northline expanded into 2 new markets. I spoke openly about being a co-owner. Naomi became more than my business partner, and June became part of my ordinary life, not only the person who rescued me during crises. Then an envelope arrived from Mom. Her apology said she missed me, but most of it described how humiliated she had felt in Maui. She never admitted that leaving me at the airport had been planned. I read it once and placed it in a drawer. I did not reply. Owen slowly rebuilt limited contact by respecting my rules. Dad remained angry. Vanessa continued telling people I had ruined the vacation. Their version no longer controlled my peace. For my 40th birthday, June and I went to Maui. We chose the hotel together. We paid our own shares. Nobody treated love like a debt. One evening, we stood on the beach as the sun lowered over the water. I thought about the airport and realized something that would once have broken my heart. My family had not abandoned the person I was. They had abandoned the service I provided. And when I stopped confusing being needed with being loved, I finally became free. If this story reminded you of a time your boundaries were called selfish, share your experience in the comments. Subscribe for more stories about truth, dignity, and walking away without losing yourself. They thought leaving me behind would erase me. Instead, it showed me exactly where my life needed to begin.